Yeah, good afternoon to everybody. Yeah, University of Pretoria, we going away to Abington on Sunday. I think first and foremost, it's always a privilege for Amatax to be in the last 32. The ambition of the club always is to go as far as possible in the competition. So I think at the same time, we've got a very difficult fixture as much as it's a familiar team because we play in the same league. But I think the logistics that go with this fixture make it quite challenging. 10 hours travel to Uppington, the heat factor is also going to contribute. How we manage our recovery is important. But yeah, we have to overcome all that and try and have the team as fresh as possible for the game. And I think for us, Tuks has gone quite far previously in this tournament, going on to play Sundowns and being knocked out by Sundowns. I think it was his quarterfinal or semi-final. And we hope that this season we can go as far as possible, and as far as possible is the final. And I think, as everybody knows, cup competitions, they can be difficult, but they can also be not easy, but flexible in terms of the opponents you get. You've got 4 games and you're in the final. It's about mentality, it's about performance on the spot. And I think at the end of the day, it's about which team wants it the most, hopefully in the 90 minutes. And we hope and we will prepare to be the team that advances, obviously, to the last 16 of the tournament.
Thank you very much, Coach. We will now take questions from the floor. Just by a show of hands, I already see one from Temba Shabalala. Yeah.
Um, Chamashavala Joseph from Sports Coach. Tax has had, some history with this cup particularly. I mean, even your players like Togo Siyende, your Andy Lejani, the list is endless that you produced as Tax, the institution. Looking at where the club is now, how much of that really do you use as a yardstick maybe for your current crop to show them that anything is possible for a lower division team to cause an upset within, the bigger ranks, even go to the final, as you say?
Yeah, I think we're quite privileged as Amatax to have that history. And having that, yes, it is something that we've spoken to the players about. Not just about the tournament, but about the growth of the players also. Obviously, it's a different phase for the club. It's a club in transition. We are in year one of a transition program. So there are certain things that we're looking to change in the club that are obviously going to take time, and I think that's been evident in our performances in the league. But from a mentality perspective, from a desire perspective, from an incentive perspective, we have to use the positive history. The Andy Lejalis, the Mthokozi Siyendes, the Bongani Zungus. Hopefully, these players can emulate that generation and even go further to go on to win the tournament. Nedbank Cup, I think everybody knows. It's a tournament that has no guarantee for anyone to win it. It's the teams that are up to the task, the teams that are motivated, and I think we've seen in the games that have already started playing that some of the teams in the lower divisions are not necessarily pushovers. So the one thing that this fixture gives us also is that there's a guaranteed Motsipe Championship Foundation team that's going to be in the last 16. So the battle is for us to ensure that that team is Amatax. And yeah, the history of Amatax and I think the stature of Amatax necessitates that we perform to advance to the next level.
Thank you, Coach Mazola.
Okay, Coach Mazola from SABC Sport. Um, Obviously, the rule that seems to divide the country falls away this weekend, the under 23 rule. First of all, your thoughts on it in general, applying it in the second tier of SA football, and does it make this fixture a bit different because you are playing in the same league and usually you have that rule enforced, but now for the cup it falls away.
I think maybe based on my history in coaching and where I've spent most of my time, the role becomes uh, a bit irrelevant for me in both the league and the competition because I'm a coach that's passionate about young players. Um, yes, sometimes when we sit with the management of the club, everybody, the first thing they say is that, coach, you are not tied by the under 23 rule. But I think the most important thing is performance. It's players that are capable of performing at the stage. And I think as a club and as a country, as much as we are in competition to win trophies, I think we must never lose sight of building institutions and of building the country. Because when we don't afford young players an opportunity to play, whether it's the league or the cup competition, we really are affecting the future of the country and the progression because these players need exposure. If you look at national teams or clubs all over the world, actually, if you go globally, the age of making it professionally has dropped drastically. That the average age of players going into professional football internationally is 17, 18, 19 years old at maximum. And I think as South Africa, we have to get down to that. So when it comes to the competition, we are going to play the players that we feel are up to the to what is required and that can deliver, irrespective of their age. So the under 23 rule is not an age that affects us too much. The composition of our squad is quite young because we are rebuilding. So I think maybe for other teams, they get more of an incentive from the rule not being applied in the Nedbank Cup. But for us, it's a continuation of the process. So we don't view the Nedbank Cup differently to the league games that we play week in, week out.
Thank you, Coach Colin.
Coach, thank you so much, Coach. Colin from Joseph. I just want to get into the aspect of your advantage from varsity level, that you use the advantage of technology, using the advantage of sports management and scientific interventions. And every time we saw you performing, you're not a choker. You always go to certain levels. How best do you apply intelligence? Because we know that science is part of varsities.
I think, Amatax, obviously, with the infrastructure that is there, first of all, that's the biggest advantage probably over 99% of the clubs in both the Motsepe Foundation and the Betway Premiership. Secondly, there's a high performance center which gives us access into high level scientific support. The intellectual part goes with that. It's not separate. When we talk about performance in football, we talk about five performance factors: technique, tactical. No, let me start it correctly. Actually, the five performance factors. The first one is mental, which is the intellectual. And then you go to technique, tactical, physical, and social. So I think Amatax gives us a good infrastructure, but I think also I come from, before joining Amatax, I've been at two big institutions. I started coaching at Wits University, which had a similar, very, very similar infrastructure, background, expertise. Supersport United built something similar at that club. Amatax, but I think maybe the difference with Amatax is that it's probably the first time that they get a coach that has been at so many levels of coaching, that has been exposed to youth football, to professional football, to international football with national teams. And I think as much as Amatax have given us so much more than many other teams, especially for me as a coach, but there's also a transition that is going on at Amatax to bring everybody to the highest possible level from the performance and the delivery perspective. So many clubs are using technology analysis. I think almost everybody in the league uses analysis at the moment, but not everybody is at the same level scientifically. And hopefully that will give us the edge, not only in this tournament, but in the development of the players and the development as a club as a whole.
Okay, Jet.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks much. My question is two-pronged, Coach. We in this space, every time I come here with the chairman, he always says, yesterday's sun can't dry today's washing. So when you speak about the history of attacks, how much pressure is there to also try and achieve something new with attacks?
but at the same time, you have only promotion and the Nedbank Cup to play for each season. How do you sort of frame the targets in those two aspects? And then second part of the question is, because you only have the Nedbank Cup, is there a concern of a lack of knockout football for the players to be able to deal with that pressure? I know you played the qualifiers, obviously, last year, but is there a concern for players that don't get enough exposure to knockout football?
Okay, let me start with your last question. I think generally there is that concern for that division, that maybe there is not enough competitions in terms of, especially knockout competitions, to give these players experience in preparation for the higher level. Similarly, sometimes you hear at the higher level clubs complaining that there's too many cup competitions. So, but from the aspect that you asked that question, I think there is that concern because competitions give experience to players, competitions give practice to players, competitions give education to players. So, from that perspective, there is that concern. I think from an Amatax pressure perspective, I joined Amatax. When I joined Amatax, I had opportunities to join other clubs. I had offers even in the PSL. But one of the main reasons why I joined Amatax was the presentation of a project. This is a 2 to 3 year project with the aim of getting promotion over the years. Whether we get it in the first year, the second year, but ultimately by the third year, we've got to be a team that competes to gain promotion. The objectives are not too broad as Nedbank Cup and promotion to the league. No, the objectives are actually multifold. Yes, ultimately in the first division, we want promotion to go into the Betway Premiership. That's the ultimate goal. Secondly, we would like to win every game and every competition we participate in, Nedbank Cup included. But thirdly, we also want to continue the wheel of producing players. Amatax was known as a club that has produced players, the likes of Zungu, the likes of Jali, the likes of George Maduleke, so many players that have come through that institution. It's a very big club. It's the biggest club in Southern Africa in terms of membership. So it's important to gain promotion. It's important to win the trophy, but it's also important to ensure that we produce players not only for economic reasons, but also generally for the stature of Amatax as a club that is known to give opportunity to young players and to provide those opportunities for those young players to go and play for bigger clubs locally and internationally. And I think also one of the biggest factors that I was brought to Amatax is to also change the brand of football that the institution has been playing. I think since its inception, Tax has been known to play a certain brand of football. And one of the major challenges that I have is to change many years of history and at the same time achieve success. And I think anywhere in the world, it's a difficult task, especially when there is not a lot of money that is thrown into the project. So you have to do it through youth. But it's a challenge that I'm excited about. It's a challenge that jointly with the management, the board of Amatax, and the support that I have in the institution, that we believe that we will achieve all the goals that have been set as I have outlined them.
Thank you, Coach. Yes, Mahlatsi.
Good morning, Coach. Just to go back on the issue of South African football not producing exceptional young players, whether for local football or for overseas and those types of things. It's interesting because last night we were with Coach Slimakaya at Rafters and he said something along the lines of, we're training if we continue at this rate in terms of development structures and talent identification and pathways of players, from youth graduating to the university. Just as somebody who has been on the cold face of junior development football, where are we lacking and how do we get around this issue? Because we talk about it every season, nothing ever happens.
There's many answers to that question. But let me touch on something that maybe a lot of people don't touch on. If we go back to the history in South Africa, the times when players were able to go abroad, if you go to the likes of Firmo Masinga, Lucas Radebe, I think there's a dynamic that we are missing that also contributes to this factor of players playing internationally. As much as it's about development and pathway, but I think also political dynamics also do play a role, you know. During the apartheid era, if I may refer to it like that, a lot of African countries were colonized by European countries. And through that relationship per se, there was a pathway. You know, if you go to West Africa and North Africa, a lot of those players, their pathway is to France, which is West Africa, which is the countries that had colonized them. Why? Because even after colonization, that relationship has been kept. A lot of those kids, Didier Drogba, for example, is not regarded as an African product because he went to Europe at the age of 13. So he practically grew up in France. There were no restrictions on passport, there were no restrictions on visa. What are the restrictions that we have? So during that time, there were not much restrictions in terms of going to British countries. Hence, our players were able to go to British countries because we were colonized by the British. But when that ended, the restrictions came into place. And that plays a major role in inhibiting or in limiting the number of players that can go abroad. Because now then you have to meet the issue of national team caps. And that then goes back to our development now. And that also goes back to how much opportunity are we giving our youngsters. Because it's difficult unless a kid goes to Europe at the age of 13 and mostly now maybe for school. The only other countries that we are able to go to are probably what is referred to as the Scandinavian countries because the restrictions are less there and football is still developing there. So the big European countries, the need to go and get an exceptional young star outside England, Spain, Italy has become less because they are affording more and more of their youngsters an opportunity. And that is what is important for South Africa also, that by these international countries limiting the number of foreign players that play in those leagues, it has opened the door for more of their youngsters to play. And I think now in South Africa, we're beginning to see, and especially through also the DTC, we're beginning to see a lot more youngsters play at professional football than it used to be before. Another factor that contributes is the money factor. You know, the more there is money, the less sometimes there is an inclination to play youngsters because I can go and buy a ready-made player. So it's a number of factors, but I'm touching on the political factor because it's one that I think many of us have never really touched on and have never really looked at the impact of political relations in terms of players moving cross-border.
Thank you, Coach. Spogas, you had a hand up. Are you covered? All right, I want to check, do we have any embargo questions here? Or can we continue with,
Competition.
there's no embargo. This one should have been embargo. Okay, should we embargo that one? Let's ask, because that's your question. Do you want it already because it could be trending before this press conference ends, it will be already out there. Okay, he's happy either. Okay, let's continue, Jake.
Coach, this might sound a bit personal to you. As don't get me wrong if I say as a younger coach, because of course we've got the legendary, older coaches. I mean, the surge of South African coaches, the growth of them, Coach Rolani, Coach Fadlu, yourself. There's quite a lot of younger coaches, Coach Patela. But now we've seen the exit of our coaches going to coach outside our country and then going to other parts of the continent, whether it's Coach Senong and all of that, Morena. What do you make of the growth of our young South African coaches going out and looking at what they give to the continent itself? Is our football respected the way it should based on what we give the continent as South Africa? And on a personal note, why is Anele they're not looking at, people are not looking at you as a professional coach that is result driven, but but you turn on the touchline, you're always emotional about the game. What causes that?
It's funny that I actually expected that question. Let me start by saying I'm a very passionate person about football, firstly. Secondly, I've had the unique privilege of working in probably all aspects of football. If we can go to Mr. Stenswar, who's I think a referees match commissioner with the referees, and if you can look at his archives, I was one of the top referees in the Eastern Cape, together with Kwanegle Kopo, Pio Chibiliza. I think Kwanegle Kopo had an interview one time on radio, and he said that we wrote a referee's exam, and I outclassed all of them. So I have a top background in refereeing, firstly. And in all the coaching courses we do, we always do the laws of the game, and I always pass them with A. That is not to undermine the referees. Secondly, I came as a football player to Gauteng. I played at Wits University in the under-19s, I played in the reserve team. I stopped because I injured my Achilles and I could not continue anymore. And I was studying law at the Wits University. And when I got injured, I went and I studied sports management. And I passed that with distinction. Then I got into football. I'm very passionate about football. People tend to see me only on the touchline. I think those that have been to my training sessions will see that I am no different at training. So it's not something that prevails in the touchline. I'm very ticked by people that underperform, whether it's my players, whether it's my staff, whether it's match officials. I'm very ticked about it. And people tend to undermine us, especially myself, because I'm short. People think he's another 20-year-old. There's a coach in the PSL that says to me, son. I get along very well with him. But when he speaks to me, he always says, my son, my son. And another day, one of these days, I went and I checked his date of birth, and he's actually 5 years older than me. But I think because of the perception that is there, that he's a young boy, he doesn't know anything, he's not a big name because the big names are this. I think that we don't get treated the same. But most importantly, what I want to emphasize is what I do comes from a passion for football. I am not rude, because I say to people, if I was rude, I would get a red card every week, but I don't. So it's about being passionate, and that passion has fortunately or unfortunately contributed in bringing out players like Kemi Terasmus, Kamayo Mokocho, Pilane Kwena, Roman Williams, Tebogo Mokwena, Sipompule, Temperament. I can count many. So I demand a lot of people that I work with. I demand a lot of people that are in football, and that's who I am. I don't mean to be rude to anybody. Those that get offended, my apologies. But this comes from being passionate. And lastly, I was mentored. The first coach to give me an opportunity in the PSL as an assistant coach is Peter Musuma. What is his personality like? Another coach that has given me an opportunity is Gavin Hunt. What is his personality like? So if you look at myself, you look at Rulani, we are both products of Peter Musuma. Maybe we are both stubborn. And maybe we are both shouting. But it comes from passion. It does not come from a bad space. It comes from being passionate about what you're doing and being passionate to ensure that people fulfill their potential. Because many of our players do not fulfill their potential.
We will leave the other one.
We are not embargoing this one.
Yes, the one about
I think it's a great reflection of what is happening in South Africa, and credit to the education system. As much as we criticize the South African Football Association a lot, but all these coaches that you have counted have come through that education system, the SAFA courses, and obviously lately to change to become CAF courses. But I think also it's opportunities that our clubs have given us to interact with international clubs and international partners. And some international coaches that have come to the country have also really contributed to not only the development of players, but the development of coaches. So I think it's huge credit to what we offer, to what our coaches, to the level of expertise that our coaches have. And it bodes well that our coaches can go on and coach in other African countries and United Arab Emirates, as Pitso Mosimane has done. And I think there's a lot more. I think the current generation of coaches that is coming through, just like the current generation of young players that is coming through, is really going to take the world by storm. And I think as South Africans, we should be proud of that.
Thank you, Coach. We are now wrapping up. I think I saw some hands. Okay, let's go to Kamo. We'll still have an opportunity maybe for two more.
Well, Coach Kamkhalo Makhale from Vow FM. Coach, you are at the helm of Amatax right now, and I just want to ask you, how is the pressure like being at the helm of Amatax as compared to probably the pressure of a team probably in the Betway Premiership, and also back to the match as well. I know as well you don't have the powers to undo the fixture, but now the fixture is what it is. Do you then take it as it is, or would you like to have maybe a different team as compared to the team that you have? That's a familiar for to you guys.
I think they say you must be careful what you wish for. No. We up to the fixture. I've been to Kimberley and Uppington a number of times, and as a coach myself, personally, I have not really the teams that I have coached have not gone to that part of town and lost. With Pretoria Kellys, we played draw. I went there with Chipa on a pre-season tour, so it's an environment I am familiar to. I was just highlighting the logistics because it takes the whole day to travel there. But we were excited about the game. I wouldn't want to say we would have preferred this opponent or that opponent. It's a game of 90 minutes. It's 11 versus 11. They've got a good coach in Coach Pasi. They've done very well, Hungry Lions. I think they're in the top six in the league currently. So it's an opponent that we highly, highly respect. But it affords us the similar opportunity as any other team we will play. And I think the most important thing, like every other team, Tax wants to do well in the competition. And if doing well means winning the cup, Tax wants to win the cup. And that's the mentality and approach that we're going to have going into this game. I can't remember your first question, sorry.
The pressure.
I think the pressure is the same with any other team. The difference is the people that you're dealing with. In some clubs you deal with the chairman only. In this being the institution, I'm dealing with a board. And I think Tax wants to see itself in the Betway Premiership. As I said, it's the largest club in Southern Africa. So the pressure is the same for results every week as every other club. But I think the understanding of a process is probably much better at Tax because of the type of people that they are. And it's a club that a lot of coaches that have been at Tax have stayed there for quite long. So it's a stable club. It's not a club that chops and changes coaches. And I think that's what gives me comfort. But I am expected to deliver results week in, week out, like any other coach. But I think what gives a little bit of relief is the fact that we have all bought into a project over 3 years. And therefore, there's certain targets that are set annually. And as long as I perform according to those targets, reasonable targets, and as long as I perform to those targets, then I will be able to see out my stay at Tax.
All right, I know I said we'll take more questions, but looking at the time, we ran for 29 minutes now, so we have to end it here.
Just want some context.
Don't ask the targets.
Okay, quick one. Can we get the microphone to you?
Thanks, Coach. Just so I can understand and everyone's clear, why are you saying Tax is the biggest club in Southern Africa?
From a membership perspective, when we talk of Amatax, we're not talking only of the team in the Motsipe Championship Foundation. We're talking of a club. I'm representing a club, not a team. We're talking of a club that starts at under 7, under 8, under 9, Chad. So from a membership perspective, Tax has got more than 2,500 members. Give me another club that has that. So when I spoke about my background at Wits University, for example, when I was at Wits in 1994, Wits was the largest club in Southern Africa from a membership perspective. So when we look at the structure of the club, women's football, youth, because the Motsipe Championship team is it's the most senior team and the flagship of a bigger program. So it's in that context that I say Tax is the largest club in the Southern continent.
Thank you so much. We'll end it on that note.